Hello, and welcome to Virtual Investor Conferences. On behalf of OTC Markets, we are very pleased you've joined us for the third day of our Precious Metals and Critical Minerals Conference. The next presentation of the day is from Q2 Metals. Please note you may submit questions for the presenter in the box to the left of the slides. You can also view a company's availability for one-on-one meetings by clicking Book a Meeting. At this point, I am very pleased to welcome Alicia Milne, Chief Executive Officer, President, and Director of Q2 Metals, which trades on the OTCQB venture market under the symbol QUEXF and on TSXV under the symbol QTWO. Welcome, Alicia.
Thanks, Lily. Thanks for having me, and thanks for everybody joining. As Lily mentioned, I am Alicia Milne. I'm the President and CEO of Q2 Metals. We are a TSX Venture Exchange company listed on the TSX Venture Exchange, as well as the OTCQB. We have a lithium project in the EU James Bay region of Quebec, Canada. I will be speaking to some forward-looking statements today. I invite you to download our presentation and have a read through these forward-looking statements here. But for the most part, Neil McCallum, who is our Vice President of Exploration and our qualified person, has signed off on all of the technical information that's contained herein. As I mentioned, we are a Canadian mineral exploration company that's focused on our Cisco lithium project, which is based in the Nemaska Cree territory in the EU James Bay region of Quebec, Canada. This is a good overhead shot of the Cisco project. Down in the bottom part of your screen there, just above our logo, you can see what we refer to as the CO1 outcrop. It's pretty much the most dominant outcrop that you'll see on the project. And this, for the most part, is looking towards the south. So, you know, where the actual mineralized zone is fairly heavily treed. And the geologists are actually using LiDAR to detect other additional outcropping areas. And then they go there, map and sample it, and then we drill around it. But for the most part, it is a forested area. I mentioned that I'm the CEO and president. I have a legal background. I've worked in the mineral exploration industry for about 20 odd years now. Neil McCallum, who is our Vice President of Exploration, is also a geologist. He has worked in the lithium space for about 9 to 10 years now. He was part of the original team that staked part of the Corvette project, which is now known as the Shakachuanan project, owned by PMET Resources. Jody Belfleur is our CFO, and Simone Gavin is our Vice President of ESG. Simone is actually based in the Rouyn-Noranda area in the Abitibi region of Quebec, and has been very instrumental in pushing forward our community relations activities, as well as all sorts of various other things to do with permitting, environmental, that sort of thing. Recently, we announced the appointment of Keith Phillips as a director of the company. That was in October of 2025. And just a few weeks back, we appointed him as the executive chair of the board. Keith is formerly of Piedmont Lithium. Once the merger between Piedmont and Sayona completed, he was more than happy to join our board. A quick look at our share structure. So this is as at yesterday. As you can see on the share price chart here, this is a year sort of snapshot, or actually it's a 2-year snapshot, my apologies, because essentially we bought Cisco 2 years ago. You can see our share price was trading roughly around the 25-cent mark when we announced the acquisition of Cisco. And once we started issuing assays and visual results of what we're seeing coming out of the ground, you can see how our share price kind of spiked there in, was that October, November of 2024. For the most part in 2025, we're kind of tracking around the 80-cent to $1 range. We had a bit of a sell-off in March and April of this past year and have since climbed back upwards. We recently hit a high of about $2.35 Canadian, and now we're tracking about $2.11. In August of 2025, we did do a financing. It was a charity flow-through financing, which means that all funds that are raised in that financing need to be spent directly into exploration work. We raised $26 million Canadian, And that really allowed us to accelerate the program that we were working on. Currently, we have cash on hand of about $17 million, of which roughly $15 million of that is still flow-through funds. So that is going directly into exploration work over this upcoming season, so currently and moving into the summer. What's to note, though, on this share structure page is our warrants that are outstanding. So when we acquired Cisco back in 2024, we did do a financing that was at a 25 cents for a unit. Attached to those units were warrants. So there was a half warrant attached to them. There's still approximately 8 million warrants outstanding. So those are expiring in July 31st, 2026, and we fully expect those to come in. They've essentially been in the money since we issued them, so it's just a matter of the holders exercising them. Insiders of the company hold approximately 25% of the issued outstanding share capital. We do have analyst coverage provided to us through Canaccord Genuity and Argonaut Limited out of Australia. And on to Cisco. So this is the highway that runs north from the town of Metagami all the way up to the town of Radisson in northern Quebec. And for the most part, where we are in the James Bay region, it's forested. There's a lot of forestry companies in there that harvest the trees and replant them. As you can see, this is a 2-lane highway. It's fully paved. It's kept nice and clear in the winter times, and is essentially the main access route to go north to the town of Radisson. Location-wise, you can see where we are here on the map. We are the most southern project, so we're just 150 kilometers away from the town of Metagami. Other projects in the area, you have Rio Tinto, which holds the Galaxy project in Whabouchi, Critical Elements with the Rose project, Elevra with Moblin, but for the most part, we are the most southern project in the region closest to the railway. Metagami itself is a historic mining town. There's Metagami Mine, which is near there. It's also the Canadian National Railway railhead. So any product coming out of the James Bay region would be shipped to Metagami and then put on the rail to then head to the port system or to a town of Bécancour, which is being developed as a battery hub by the Quebec government. Various end users have facilities down there, conversion facilities, to then essentially go into the supply chain of North America. Or the rail would also go to the ports in Saguenay or Quebec City, Montreal, that sort of thing. Quebec itself has recently announced their newest updated strategy for the development of critical and strategic minerals. For the most part, that is accelerating development or stimulating development on infrastructure in the area, modernizing the ports, the rail, and essentially the corridors to improve access to the mining projects. This is a quick overview of what the Cisco project itself looks like. That highway that I pointed out earlier, the Billy Diamond Highway, runs through certain portions of the project. Currently, we are permitting an access road to come in off of one portion of that highway there, which would essentially go directly to Cisco. It's about a 12-kilometer road that we're in the process of permitting, and we'd have a camp along the way to essentially make it a little bit cheaper. Currently, we are helicopter access only, so that would definitely cut down on the cost for the helicopters, and then we'd be able to drive directly to the Cisco mineralized zone. As I mentioned, we acquired the project in February of 2024. And previous to that, the vendors of the project had done some work. So they had done some initial mapping and sampling around that main CO1 outcrop area. And they actually did a drill program. So they drilled 6 holes. In the last 3 holes is when they actually started hitting spodumene pegmatite. So in one of the holes, hole number 5, they hit 48 meters of continuous spodumene pegmatite, which ended up assaying at 1.36% lithium oxide. When we got out there in 2024, we were able to drill 17 holes for about 6,300 meters. 2025, we drilled another 53 odd holes for 24,000 meters. So to date, there's approximately 74 holes, or there actually is 74 holes for approximately 31,000 meters. We did publish an exploration target based on the first 40 holes that we drilled. And as you can see, here are the drill highlights from what we started seeing. So the CO1 outcrop is at the top of this this main mineralized zone. So you can see that there's a red shaded area. That's what we refer to as the mineralized zone. Once we started drilling near that CO1 outcrop where the vendors had originally drilled, as we started coming around to the south of it is when we started hitting some pretty wide intervals. So the first hole, hole number 10 there, was 120 meters that graded at 1.72% lithium oxide. Hole 18, as we continued towards the south, 215 meters of continuous spodumene pegmatite. And the hits just kept coming. So hole 21, 347 meters, which assayed at 1.35%. Most notably on here is hole 44, which was a continuous interval of 457.4 meters that assayed at 1.65%. In the James Bay region, I would say a lot of companies are hitting between 30 to 50 meter intervals. So these are fairly significant, having continuous spodumene intervals of grading quite consistently between about 1.35% to 1.7-ish% lithium oxide. This here is a long section of the actual mineralized zone. So your CO1 outcrop is on the northeast, so on the left side of this presentation, heading towards the south. So for the most part, it starts at surface and it continues gently sloping on a south-southwest sort of trend. For the most part, most of our drilling has been done in that main sort of section in the middle of that mineralized zone. And as we continue to progress with Cisco, we'll fill in the gaps towards the south there, tightening up the drill spacing. But for the most part, there is a large system that is forming underneath the surface there that will just get better defined as we continue to drill. In order to better explain to people what we were seeing with these wide intervals, our key goal last year was to put out an exploration target. So it's a 43101 compliant exploration target on this main mineralized section. So that red shaded section there. It was based on the first 40 holes that were drilled for 16,167 meters. And it was prepared by an independent consultant, BBA, who is actually in the process of working on our mineral resource estimate. And what an exploration target is, it's a conceptual estimate based on drilling at that point to see what exactly would be the tonnage. So what BBA came up with was that based solely on that first 40 holes, 16,000 meters in that red shaded area here, Cisco was looking to be at a minimum of 215 million tons to a maximum of 329 million tons with a lithium oxide range essentially from 1 to 1.38%. This is conceptual. It's just an estimate based off the first 40 holes. So for context, globally speaking, at that minimum tonnage range, that would put Cisco in the top 10 of world largest hard rock lithium deposits. And what the goal is, once we issued this exploration target, was to start infill drilling in that main mineralized zone so that we could put out a resource estimate and actually assign some official numbers to what we were seeing here. The next couple slides are a few cross sections. So this is at the top near that CO1 outcrop. As you can see, it sort of pinches towards the top. Recent drilling in December, end of November, beginning of December, actually came up with a few drill hits that were outside of that mineral exploration zone. So you can see their hole 65 came outside of what was expected, and assays for that were about 1.34%. It was 170 odd meter hit that we had that was completely unexpected. So potentially the trend of the actual mineralization is trending even further towards the north. This next cross section B is pretty much right through the meat of the mineralized zone. You can see a big sort of blobby shape forming in the middle there. For the most part, that is actually getting better defined as we continue to drill. So drilling to date has essentially been, 150 to 300 meter step outs. Now we're bringing that back in. So we're looking at right now for our inferred resource estimate to be about 120 meter step outs in between each hole. And then we'll further tighten that up as we continue to progress. But for the most part, there is a large, wide system that's formed. On the next cross section here, you can see that hole 44, which was that long hole of the 457 meters. Again, that started at closer to surface mineralization, which wasn't expected, and then even comes outside of that main mineralized zone. So it's quite a significant interval that we hit there. And then in this next cross section D here, that hole 63 there actually hit mineralization where it wasn't expected. So completely outside of that main mineralized zone. Assays are still pending on that one as well. There is a video of the exploration target of the actual modeling that was done on our website. And I think it's on the front page of the website, but for the most part, this is a couple of screenshots that we took of it. You can see where that red mineralized zone is that we've sort of outlined on other maps. And then as you go underground, you can see how there's the main section is forming, plus there's a couple of stacked pegmatites around it. Again, this is a conceptual estimate based only on those first 40 holes. So with our resource estimate that we're currently working on, hoping to publish in the middle of March, it'll add a little bit more to what this actual model looks like, just because we've drilled more. A question that we were asked right off the hop was, how is our metallurgy looking? So initial mineralogical work showed that spodumene was the primary lithium-bearing mineral in all the pegmatite. And then we did do a first phase of metallurgy test work on 3 composite samples that were taken. So what that initial work did using HLS to confirm that we could use a dense media separation process ended up coming up with about a 70% recovery rate, producing 5 to 5.5% spodumene concentrate. There's low iron, there's no deleterious minerals in there, and we'll just continue doing a next phase of metallurgy work. I believe Neil has that underway right now or sometime this month, so we should see some results of that in probably the late spring, early summer. Location-wise, in the EU ITCHI, we are in the Nemaska Cree territory. So we are 230 kilometers away from the actual community of Nemaska. It's on Category 3 lands, and we're actually on the N20 trap line. Right now, we are doing community consultation work, so engaging and communicating with the local stakeholders. So the town of Matagami, the Nemaska Cree Nation, the Waswanipi Cree Nation, and the local land users. And that will be ongoing as we continue to move forward. We also use companies that are associated with the First Nations. So Uden Roulier Drilling, Air Quebec, Petronor, these are all companies that have either joint ventures or are owned by the Cree. And we'll just continue to communicate with them and build the relationships there. We're also undergoing our Ecologo certification, which is essentially good business practices for having policies and procedures in place to protect the environment, to protect your staff, that sort of thing. And what's upcoming for 2026? So currently we have 4 drill rigs out at Cisco focused on infill drilling. So as I mentioned before, previous drilling that was done were 150 to 300 meter step outs. We're bringing that back in to about 120 meter step out in between, and then further tightening up our drill spacing as we push towards issuing our inaugural inferred mineral resource estimate, which we are aiming to publish middle of March. Additional metallurgy work is ongoing. We'll be conducting a second phase of that. We do still have assays from 2025. So some of the drill holes that were done towards the later half of 2025, those will be announced in the near future. And then we'll have rolling assays to report as we continue drilling. So we've already got a few holes in the ground already, and that'll just be ongoing as we continue to move forward. We will be commencing preliminary economic assessment work. So that actually has already been started. Neil and his team have been working with some of the engineers and geologists to start some more or less desktop work as we get into the spring, summer. Once we get this MRE out there, then we'll get going on that. And again, baseline studies, getting those underway, and then permitting the access road and camp, which is a key for us right now to cut down on the helicopter cost. To wrap up, why Q2 metals? From what we can tell, based on that exploration target, which again is a conceptual, we have the scale and we have the grade, and it is closest to infrastructure, so closest to the sea and railway, closest to getting into the port system. Quebec has been a great jurisdiction to work in. They're very supportive, and we're poised for growth. So we have a lot of near-term catalysts, and we're looking forward to continuing to move Cisco forward. And that's the end of the presentation. So let me have a look at some of the questions here. The first one, do you expect that the MRE to fall within the range that you mentioned, and how does that compare with other projects? Yes, so we expect it to fall in the range of the exploration target. So that target was, or the range I should say, was 215 million tons to 329 million tons. So we expect it to fall within there. Where exactly it ends up is still to be determined. Geologists are still working on that, so we will find out soon enough. Have all the holes been drilled for the MRE? So yes, so drilling that we did up until December 15th is when we shut down for the Christmas season. All of those holes will be included in the MRE. Here's a good question. Several commentators are already calling Cisco a potential top 5 global lithium deposit candidate. What do you think they're seeing in the data that the broader market may not be appreciating yet? I can't speak to what they're seeing in the data, but for the most part, I think based on the widths of the intervals that we're seeing and the consistency between all of them, I think it is shaping up to be quite a large system. I think it, at the end of the day, will be a very strategic asset, not only for Quebec, but for North America, just given its size. Here's a question. Will there be additional expansion or discovery drilling elsewhere on the property moving forward? Definitely. So currently I know that Neil and the geologists that we have working on the project are working on the infill drilling, which will go into the eventual updated MRE that we're looking forward to publishing later on in the summertime. But for the most part, there are additional zones that need testing. So as I mentioned, hole 63 and hole 65 weren't expected. The mineralization that we hit in them wasn't expected. So I know Neil is very much looking forward to testing up and around the CO1 outcrop, where we saw hole 65 hit a nice zone of mineralization that, you know, for the most part, we thought that the mineralization was pinching off towards the top at CO1, but it looks to appear to be going out, blowing out towards the side potentially. So there will be additional drilling up there. As well, there's another outcrop to the east of CO1 which we've named the CO2 outcrop. It's a fairly significant outcrop. For the most part, they will be getting out there and doing some drilling around there. So there's lots of blue sky, lots of additional exploration targets that we're looking forward to testing. A question from Sam. How are you thinking about broadening your shareholder base? Are there specific institutional or strategic pools of capital you're now targeting as the story matures? Absolutely. Chris, who's our corporate development person, him and I have been out on the roads a lot in 2025, doing a bunch of conferences, institutional meetings. So getting the story out there. I think when we bought Cisco in 2024, nobody really cared about lithium. I mean, those that care, but for the most part, we've been sort of flying under the radar. So getting out there, introducing people to Cisco, introducing people to Q2, who we are, what we are, and what the potential of Cisco is, has been a key thing for Chris and I to be doing. And I think that's attracting, and it's changing our shareholder base from, you know, your mom and pop or your retail investors to more of the institutional funds that are coming in. On that August financing that we did in 2026 or 2025, it was predominantly institutional shareholders coming in. So the shareholder base is turning. Let me look at some of these other questions here. Given your early and ongoing engagement with the Cree Nations and Tallyman, could Cisco become a model case study for Indigenous partnership in Quebec critical minerals development? That's the goal. I think it's building the relationships and having them involved, having the Cree Nation involved, having Nemaska involved. That is a key task for us to be doing. That is a key goal for us, is to have everybody involved and everybody, taking part in this, because it is an exciting project. And as I mentioned, at the end of the day, I think this is going to be a strategic project in the area. I think, given its size and given its location, I think it can't not be. So that's my opinion, but we will see as we continue to move it forward. 2026 is shaping up to be a very busy year for Q2 Metals. Yes, it is. Internally, how are you resourcing the team, technical, ESG, and corporate, so you can operate at a developer speed rather than typical junior explorer speed? That's a good question. So that's growing pains, essentially, is where we're undergoing right now. We are staffing up. So recently we hired a camp manager. We're starting to supplement the team, add to the team, putting in a project manager to continue to push things forward, because we do want to catch that next wave of the lithium price. I think if we can keep up the momentum and keep going as we are, I think that'll bode well for Cisco, and just keep moving it forward as fast as we can. Next question. North America is aggressively trying to secure local lithium supply. Oh, what happened to the question? It's gone. Sorry. Okay, let's go to this one. Quebec's critical and strategic mineral strategy 2025 to 2031 aims to make the province a hub for lithium and battery materials. How do you see Q2 leveraging that policy tailwind in terms of permitting, funding, and potential government support? This is a great question. So this is why we have had such a push to get our MRE out there. A lot of people won't talk to us, or there's a lot of funds, there's a lot of government funding that we could potentially tap into, to grants and that sort of thing, but we don't have an MRE, we don't have a PEA. So that's been a big push for us right now, is to get that MRE out there, to get those numbers documented and out into the world, to say this is what Cisco is, this is how big Cisco is, and then potentially tap into some government funding or some grants from the federal government or the provincial government. So, trying to push Cisco forward as fast as we can is the goal. And that's why we want to get that inferred mineral resource estimate out there ASAP, and then move straight into PEA. Question from Kent. With Bécancour emerging as a battery hub and major OEMs and cathode players investing there, how are you thinking about future strategic partnerships, offtake, or potential downstream integration for Cisco? Great question. At this point, yes, we have been thinking about offtake, OEMs, all the other things that go along with having a lithium project. Still early days, as I mentioned. The push is to get that MRE out there, for the most part, because a lot of the end users, a lot of the bigger companies, that's what they need to see. They need to see the MRE, they need to see a PEA. So that's the big push. You've just appointed Keith Phillips, former CEO of Piedmont Lithium, as executive chair. What are the key value add areas where he can accelerate Cisco's path from discovery to development and ultimately financing? So Keith is a former banker. He's been on Wall Street for 30 years. So he's already started making connections with us to various funds or various institutions, bankers that we wouldn't normally have reached out to. So he's been instrumental in that way alone, and that's only been in the last month or two. So as we continue to move it forward, I suspect Keith will be a little bit more involved, which is great to have, because he's got the experience both in being involved with Piedmont Lithium as well as the banking experience. Next question. If you look out over the next 12 to 24 months, which 3 milestones do you believe have the potential for true re-rating events for the stock? Well, I hope the MRE to start, because I think that'll actually put the numbers out there into the world. And I think it would then show everybody how big Cisco is, and be able to make those peer comparisons against other companies, other projects. There are other projects that are phenomenal in the James Bay region. So getting ourselves on the map, I think, is the main milestone that I'm looking towards. The next one after that would be the PEA, and then continuing to ramp up. So, it is looking to be a busy 2026 and even beyond that into 2027. So, looking forward to continuing to do the work we need to do. And I believe that is all the questions that I have here. So thank you all. If you have any other questions or comments or want to reach us, our email addresses are on here. So Alicia at q2metals.com. Chris and Jason are also around, so feel free to reach out.